Now Peter Piper picked peppers, but Run Rock rhymes. Humpty Dumpty fell down in his hard time. Jabby Nimble was nimble and he was quick, but Jam Master was faster and so J's did. And look, I probably messed that up. I'm looking at the lyrics and I'm pretty sure I messed that up. So that's a little Run DMC, Peter Piper. That was an epic fail. Because I'm looking at the lyrics, but I'm pretty sure I messed that up. I do have a plan for tonight. It's a little earlier in the evening. It's only 11:42. It's Saturday night, but the sun has set. So, Crawford's about to fight. Terrence Bud Crawford. I showed a TV as a timestamp in case the Mandela effect is real, and for all I know, it actually might be real. This is our topic for tonight. I'm gonna do this thing right here in 30 minutes. I'm gonna show you all 5 segments. I've got them lined up here, all 5 segments, and if you look for this event, they have they call it a highlight reel. They have a highlight reel. It's 11 minutes and 46 seconds. That is not what I will be doing. Mine will take about 15 minutes, but I'm going to take the whole 30. I'm going to be showing you the, so if you did, because this one's like an hour, the next one's like an hour. So it's like 3.5, 4 hours worth of footage. I'm only going to show you what they saw from the news clip that they made up from this GNN news, and they in order to keep the thing moving, they show the news clip, and so I'm going to be showing you that part, and that's the only part. I'm going to try not to talk through too much of it. I am going to be watching the whole thing with you. It should take about 15 minutes of watching that. I've timed it. I got the timestamps up there. Where's my baby? What? There she go. I've done the timestamps, so hopefully we can kind of move through it rather quickly. How's my finger again making an appearance? Because my hand is a star. We're over here in Revelation 13. That's the one. Well, I've highlighted 2 scriptures. This was the second one. That's and there was war in heaven. That's in chapter 12. We're over here in chapter 13. And I was starting to highlight it, which is why it's there, but I'm going to go ahead and read it with you and highlight it now. Alrighty. Let's see. Am I going to be able to hold that? Yes, it looks like it. And it says, starting in verse 16, Revelation 13, starting in verse 16, we're going to read 16, 17, and 18. And it says, and he causes all, both great and small, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, or he that had the buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Verse 18 and finishing, it says, here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 603 score, and a score is 20, so that'd be 603 times 20 and 6, which you guys all can do the math on really quick. It's 666. Alright, and we talked about the 33 the other time. They really like the 33 because when Satan gets kicked out, his angels were kicked out with him. It said he drew a third of the angels. He drew a third of the stars when he fell. Just going to highlight this real quick, and then we're going to get to the video of the other videos. I'm going to show you which channel I got that because if you just search Event 201, you can find it on. It's still on. Obviously I found it, and I'm gonna be going through it with you. I'm going through it with you just the news portion. so that you don't have to watch the whole thing, because it's the news portion, and then they get to basically discussing what they just saw on the news. So they use this. I'm really struggling not to call it fake news, because for the purpose of the event, it's a real news story, and but they have this news story up there, and then they're using that to continue the discussion moving forward. So the first one, it's in 5 segments, and I'm just looking at the time. Okay, 5 minutes. All right, not too bad. So it's in 5 segments. We're gonna go through all 5 segments. The first one's got like 3 clips. The second one, I think, only has one. Third one, I think, and then it's basically just one after that. So I'm just gonna be focusing on what they're talking about in the excuse me, in the news events, and not showing you what they're saying afterwards. So if you want to look that up on your own, go for it. What does that even say? Can I even see if I can get it to be still? Center for Health Security. I did subscribe. I did hit the like button. It's overwhelmingly dislike, but I hit the like button. I usually do. Not always. Sometimes I do dislike. If I dislike your video, I'll probably just leave a disappointing comment. But I usually don't dislike people's videos. Most of the time, I have, but I don't usually. All right, so let's get into this. This is segment 1. Keep in mind, it's October 19th, 2019. This really happened. This would have been right around the time that our pandemic would have been kicking off in China. So this would have been October 19. They're in New York, which I assume to be New York, New York. And I'm just going to let it play for the first few minutes. Oh, shoot. I got to take the headset
Director
out.
of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security.
Sorry.
And today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York, as well as our larger virtual audience participating online today. The goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic and the kinds of societal and economic challenges it would pose. The scenario also highlights the very critical role that global business and public-private partnerships play in preparing for and responding to pandemics. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board. This board has been urgently convened by the World Economic Forum. And Johns Hopkins has been asked to moderate the board meetings and provide expertise during the board's deliberations.
Johns Hopkins.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society. The board's recommendations are aimed at top decision makers in national governments, global business, and international organizations.
There is a mic drop at 2:49.
In this scenario, Tom Inglesby, the director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, will be chairing the board and serving as the moderator for its discussions. Today's exercise will simulate 4 meetings of the Pandemic Emergency Board, and each meeting will be devoted to one key topic. Each meeting will start with a video and a briefing that will provide the information needed for the board members to engage.
And that's what we're going to watch.
Please note, this is not a test of any particular person, organization, or nation. The participants are all playing as themselves.
They're playing as
themselves. That is, senior business executives, NGO leaders, and government officials. They're not expected to be pandemic experts. We've really asked them to participate based on their own expertise and their best professional judgment. With the exception of Tom Inglesby, none of the participants know any of the details about how the exercise will unfold.
So somebody does know.
The Event 201 scenario is fictional.
Okay,
But
listen
it's
up.
based on public health principles, epidemiologic modeling, and assessment of past outbreaks. In other words, we've created a pandemic that could realistically occur.
I want to play that again, but I want to let that sink in for you. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I know it's at 249 because
In other words, we've created a pandemic that could realistically occur. And for those interested in our assumptions, we will have a lot of the background research of the scenario publicly available on our Event 201 website at the conclusion of the exercise.
all right, we're going to be moving forward.
The policy discussions, the challenges to be discussed in this exercise represent controversial, high-stakes issues that would require high-level input from business and government leaders. So just a few housekeeping notes before
Yeah, we can stop there. We're going to be moving on to 1338 because that's when the first information. Oh, this guy's going to set it up for me. So.
In response. Despite this progress, there is still much to be done. Cross-sectoral simulation exercises, such as the one you will be experiencing today, contribute to a better understanding of the critical gaps, the cooperation required from global businesses, response decisions required from government and public health leaders to minimize large-scale economic and societal consequences of a severe pandemic. I wish you the best of luck. We are looking forward to working with each of you to strengthen pandemic preparedness in the future.
We're looking forward to working with each of you.
And our thanks to Dr. Ryan. And with that, here in New York and online, welcome to Event 201.
All right, this is going to
It
take
began in healthy-looking pigs,
about 2 minutes.
months, perhaps years ago.
And
A new coronavirus spread silently within herds.
so they said it
Gradually,
started with
farmers
pigs, but in
started
China
getting
they said
sick.
it started with bats and snakes.
Infected
And
people got a respiratory illness with symptoms
Stop.
ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive
Boxing.
care. Many died. At first, the spread was limited to
call
those
it
with
cats.
close contacts, healthcare personnel, co-workers, and families. But now, it's spreading rapidly throughout local communities. International travel has turned local epidemics into a pandemic spanning the globe. Just 3 months ago, pneumonia.
Okay, there it is.
At first, the spread
Cats.
was limited to those with close contact. Rapidly, months ago, CAP started in South America, but has now reached several countries with more than 30,000 cases and nearly 2,000 deaths.
Again, this is a simulation that they put together. Okay.
Good morning.
So, there you go. Wait.
Thank you all for being part of this pandemic emergency board. We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
Okay, so that guy's from he's from Johns Hopkins. Let me see. We got another one. We're going over to 1637. Oh, so it's just a few seconds from there. All right.
Important background for this discussion, we want to start the meeting by viewing this news story that just aired on Global News Network.
Continuing our coverage of the newly discovered CAPS disease and the scope
All
of
of her
its deadly
background is CGI,
outbreaks.
so.
There are now more than 30,000 reported cases. Experts warn this may be just the beginning of a global problem. GNN science reporters have produced a video about what we know so far about CAPS, the virus, the outbreak, and the resulting chaos.
CAPS is a novel coronavirus related to those viruses
Our
that
virus
caused
is
the
a novel
frightening
coronavirus.
SARS epidemic in 2003 and the deadly MERS outbreaks in recent years.
That's crazy. 'Cause ours
Scientists
looks like
think
that too.
each infected person in turn infects on average 2 more people.
This is
This
the R
disease
naught
is
effect.
proving more transmissible than SARS or MERS and about as contagious as influenza. Essentially, the cumulative number of cases is doubling every week. At this rate, we can expect to see 16 times as many cases in a month unless we find a way to interrupt transmission. The virus appears to be
Interrupt
spreading
transmission.
rapidly in densely populated and impoverished neighborhoods in some megacities
I
in
did
South
watch some
America.
of this.
CAPS
I
is
admit
a
I skipped
serious
through a lot of
respiratory
it because,
disease.
you know,
More
we
than
were already
half of the
dealing with
recognized cases have required hospital care, creating a huge
our
strain
virus.
on
So
healthcare systems.
I'm showing
The
you this so
fatality
that you
rate
can see
is
how
about
they're
10%.
progressing along
For comparison,
on
CAPS is about
their
as lethal
news
as
events.
SARS and 2 to 4 times more lethal than the
So
1918
a lot of this will
influenza
already look
pandemic,
familiar
the
for
worst
you.
pandemic on record.
They've already
Even
said a lot
so,
of these
some
things in
people
our
only
news.
exhibit mild flu-like symptoms,
Again, this is a
not
flashback
requiring
to
treatment in a hospital.
October 19th,
Alarmingly, those
2019.
people are able to walk around
It's
and
just
spread
over
the
a year
virus,
ago
not
in
realizing
real
they are
life.
doing so. Even worse, international travelers have been arriving at their destinations symptom-free, but
What?
within a matter of hours, becoming ill. Travel-related cases have blossomed into outbreaks in a number of
I'm getting as
locations
close as I
and
can
have
without
quickly grown
having these little
faster than
bars
health
pop up.
authorities could respond and contain them. In other places,
Like,
physicians
there's
have
a
quickly
thing coming up.
recognized
Okay,
the
we'll be
symptoms
looking
of
for
CAPS and
2140.
have been able to isolate infected individuals and avoid an outbreak, for now. Global public health experts are very concerned about this disease because it appears the virus is readily transmitted through the air from person to person. Essentially, all people are susceptible. Experts agree
I'm
unless
laughing
it is
because they
quickly
always show you the
controlled,
person
it could
that's
lead to a
sick, that's
severe
coughing or
pandemic, an
sneezing,
outbreak that
as
circles the
a
globe
way for
and
you to
affects
have to
people
wear your
everywhere.
mask when, if you're
Models
not
developed
sick
by leading
and you're
public
not
health
coughing or
authorities
sneezing,
indicate a CAPS pandemic
then
could
more
lead
often
to
than
an
not you're
outcome
breathing through your
worse than the
nose.
1918 influenza, which killed 50 to 100 million people worldwide. Given the global population is 4 times larger than it was in 1918, if these models prove accurate, we could be looking at hundreds of millions of deaths over the next year or two.
But it's boxing. He's in the
Okay,
black
now we're gonna
trunks.
get a briefing on
Okay,
the numbers
alright,
and
hold on. Let's see,
distribution
we
of
can, I
cases.
think I might get to
Dr.
this
Caitlin
pretty
Rivers.
quick. It's 2140.
As you just heard, the outbreak is very.
Alright, we're moving along pretty good. This
Continuing
one's
our
gonna last
CAPS
about
disease
3.5
coverage and
minutes,
possible
and then the
solutions,
rest of them will last
I'm
for about
joined by
3.5
immunologist
minutes after
Dr.
this.
Yvonne Bello and Dr. Rhea Blakey, an epidemiologist, both highly respected in their fields. Let's get right to it. Why are people saying a vaccine for the CAPS virus is not likely in the near term?
Researchers are working on a vaccine, and we have viable leads, but it's complicated. We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine.
So,
And sure, there are new technologies that may help,
sure we'll get it right this
but
time.
it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic. Even if we
There's
discover
another
a good
pandemic?
vaccine candidate, we're starting from scratch, and it takes time to test safety and efficacy, typically years. So even if testing
Typically.
moves quickly, global
Years.
manufacturing will still need to be established. Again, multiple hurdles.
We simply cannot rely on these old timelines and processes. This is a crisis. We have to move beyond these issues. It may be complicated, difficult, but if we dedicate all available resources, this can happen. Also, keep in mind, we need effective treatments sooner rather than later. Extranavir is an antiviral drug.
Again, I
Scientists
didn't
have
watch
told
all
me
of
this
this
could be effective.
because a
We
lot of
need
this
to
we had
start
already
treating
gone through.
people
But I'm showing
immediately.
you the phases.
While I agree Extranavir does look promising,
They're showing you the
it's
phases that the
currently
people
used
are
for
going through in
treating
the
HIV.
meeting,
However,
and I'm showing you the
it's
phases
not
that they
manufactured
got
on the
to
scale
see
needed for
while they were
treating
going through in the
this
meeting.
many people. And will we just stop using it for HIV treatment? How will we get this drug in the quantities needed? Who decides who has priority for the limited amounts we do have? We both know countries are hoarding Extranavir.
Oh,
Doctor,
somebody's
in my
hoarding.
opinion, you are lost in the details. With enough money and political will, anything is possible. Let's get going on this now.
Sounds like she's talking about
Thank you both
Jesus.
for this extremely important
But he
discussion.
doesn't use
Our
money and
U.S.
political
affiliate
will.
has just released polling results on public expectations for a vaccine. A majority of Americans expect a vaccine to be available within 2 months, and 65% of those polled are eager to take the vaccine, even if it's experimental. In related news, a significant demand for personal protective equipment like N95 masks and gloves are on the rise due to the pandemic. However, globally,
Yeah, we're
hospitals
gonna let
are
this guy
running
talk
low.
a little bit.
Additionally, other critical medical supplies such as saline and antibiotics are dwindling. Countries and companies are reportedly stockpiling supplies, disrupting healthcare supply
There's a
chains,
such thing called a
causing dangerous
pandemic pallet.
shortages in many parts of the
Some
world.
places that aren't using their
And finally, for the latest
basketball and
information
hockey
on what we
arenas,
know
they
about
have pandemic
vaccines and this
pallets
antiviral,
stocked
here's
up to the
medical
roof.
countermeasure expert Matt Watson.
Just listen to this for a
As we've
second.
just heard, there is no existing vaccine that appears effective against the newly discovered CAPS virus. Governments, scientists, and companies around the world have become working intensively to develop one, but it's highly unlikely that a vaccine could be developed, tested, manufactured, and distributed in less than a year, and it's likely to take much longer. While there have been efforts to develop vaccines against SARS and MERS coronaviruses, none have been licensed. And given the distinctions in the CAPS virus, vaccines against those diseases would not be effective for CAPS. The antiviral drug Extranavir has demonstrated some efficacy against the CAPS virus. It reduces the severity of illness and saves lives in those who are infected, but does not prevent infection like a vaccine would.
Okay, so we're going to end it there. There's obviously a lot more. We're only at the 25-minute mark on their video. It is 56 minutes long. But that was the end of segment 1 as far as we're concerned. We're going to go ahead and get started with segment 2.
The scenario now advances 3 weeks to November 7th,
3 weeks.
2019, to
Listen
the
to me
second
now,
meeting
3
of the
weeks.
Pandemic Emergency Board.
And, oh, there's somebody coughed again. I wanted to point out the cough too. So the 3 weeks, every time they have a new meeting, there's a cough. It seems like somebody coughs. But it's always 3 weeks away. And in case you hadn't heard us say before, the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I forget who else. It might be this emergency pandemic board people basically sponsoring this. 3 weeks. So this then mean 3 weeks later.
The scenario now advances 3 weeks to November 7th, 2019, to the second meeting of the Pandemic Emergency Board.
Thank you all for reconvening on short
Somebody
notice.
keeps coughing.
Let's get an update on the pandemic. Very short note.
Thanks,
Dr.
Tom.
Rivers.
Okay, hold
In the
on.
last
hold on.
3 weeks,
Sorry, I gotta play that again. You gotta hit a little joke he makes. If you didn't, I might have been talking over it.
The scenario now advances 3 weeks to November 7th, 2019, to the second meeting of the Pandemic Emergency Board.
Thank you all for reconvening on short notice. Let's get an update on the pandemic. Very short note.
Very
Rivers.
short notice.
in the last 3 weeks, we've seen a significant escalation
All right, we're gonna
of the
skip
pandemic.
ahead to the 1 minute
Previous
mark.
projections
Just check
appear
this
to have been accurate in deaths. The markets are reacting
Is it 1
negatively
minute?
to
Hold
these
on.
projections, with some markets
1:18.
now in the
All
red
right, well,
for the year.
anyway, here we go.
Thank you, Dr. Rivers. All right, we want to show you the latest news on
This will
the
take about 3
impacts of the
minutes.
pandemic on trade and travel, which will be the focus of this discussion.
In addition to global public health crisis, CAPS is creating havoc with the trade and travel
You
industries.
keep calling it caps. We
The
call it something
frightening
different.
public health toll of CAPS continues to mount. Patients are overwhelming healthcare facilities around the world,
That sounds
including
familiar.
many of the makeshift triage and temporary care facilities. People are avoiding public spaces out of fear of infection and in compliance with public health recommendations. This has had a dramatic effect on the retail and service sectors. Businesses of all kinds are struggling to operate, let alone provide basic services.
Remember, this is
after
the second
workers
meeting
have
that they're
fallen
having.
sick
This is the
or
second
refused to
time that
come to
they're
work.
watching
Some companies have allowed
a
telecommuting,
video.
but
The
for
first
most
one was a little
businesses
longer,
and
but
employees, this is
this is
not
the second
an
time
option.
that they're meeting together. They're
Public
watching this
health
video.
agencies have issued travel advisories, while some
Travel
countries have
advisories.
banned
It's
travel
3
from
weeks
the
later.
worst affected areas.
They made a
As a
little quick
result,
joke,
the travel
and
sector is
then
taking a
I'm going
huge
to show
hit.
you
Travel
segment
bookings
3.
are down 45%,
They're only going to do
and
one.
many flights have been canceled.
Yeah,
A ripple effect is racing through the service sector.
they're only going to do
Governments
one
that
video,
rely on
and
travel
it
and
should go pretty
tourism as
fast
a
after
large
this.
part of their economies are being hit particularly hard. Consumer confidence has fallen dramatically, and people are delaying or canceling discretionary purchases. As a result, manufacturers are scaling back production on many goods. On the other hand, staples like food and medicine are being hoarded. Mandated border closures and trade restrictions are creating severe localized shortages. The Purchasing Managers Index suffered its sharpest decline in 50 years. a leading indicator that markets are preparing for a prolonged period of economic disruption. In some regions, politicians are adding to the noise and confusion through social media. Ban all goods and travel from infected countries, and boycott companies that spread disease are common Twitter refrains
boycotting
often
France
led
for
by
a while.
public figures.
But that's because,
It's safe to say we face a tough dilemma.
that teacher
The
got
movement
killed.
of people may
Macron.
facilitate the spread of
Never
caps,
mind.
but interruptions to travel and trade may have economic consequences that are just as bad.
And to give us more detail on these issues before our discussion,
Somehow they
Richie
always
Amoa.
calls. Alright, we're not going to listen to this lady either. We're going to keep it moving. We're going to segment 3. And, okay. Yeah, we're gonna listen for the joke again. So, they had the first, and then the second, and this is the third.
Welcome back. Please silence your
Listen.
phones.
Listen for the joke.
We now pick up this scenario 3 weeks later at the
3
third
weeks.
meeting of the board on November 29th, 2019.
Thank you all for reconvening at short notice. We need to present to
No
this
laughter
board a
there.
serious new issue related
Nobody
to the
laughed
economic
that
fallout
time.
that is accruing over the
Nobody
pandemic.
laughed, including
Let's
me.
start with-
Everybody saw it
Still the
coming.
most severely affected, but there are large outbreaks occurring in many countries across the globe. Countries with limited healthcare infrastructure have seen the highest death rates so far, but healthcare systems in high-income
Listen for the cough. There it is.
Economic and financial crises that are rippling around the world.
They keep coughing. That's funny to me.
The response to the CAPS pandemic is now the most expensive international emergency ever. Political leaders around the globe are faced with many impossible dilemmas, including financial.
It's going to take about
We
3
have
minutes.
2 guests today to discuss the
3.5
bottom line
minutes.
of catastrophic
We're almost to the end. This
response.
is in section 3.
First up is economist
3
Dave
minutes in
Gamble.
section 4.
Are we out of
and
money?
then
The best way to answer that is no. We are
2
not
minutes or
out
so
of money.
in section 5. So
Yet.
it's
But
going
the
to be
fact is we are
almost a
trending in a
30-minute
dangerous
video.
direction, and something needs to change.
You have been
could've
quite
skipped a
vocal
lot of this.
about
I
that
didn't
and
wanna hear none of
generated
this, to be
some
honest with you.
controversy along the way.
I just wanted to make sure
Look,
that you saw
you
what
know
they
me.
were saying.
I try to avoid controversy.
Because it
But come
actually
on,
looks like a
common
real
sense says it
news
shouldn't be
broadcast. It
controversial
sounds
to
like a
suggest our
real
response should prioritize both
broadcast
lives
that we're hearing
and
now.
livelihoods. Absolutely, we need to save lives. We all know someone who's been affected by caps. But we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy. Pragmatism is a wise choice. I mean, what exactly are the risks and benefits of slowing air travel, of staying home from work,
Yeah.
closing schools,
Yeah.
disrupting supply chains,
Yeah.
interfering with our reliable channels of communication and news?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, some of these steps can help slow caps, but
Can it?
often only marginally and with
Marginally.
serious costs. When this is all over, some families, some cities, will have suffered more from our interventions than from caps.
Yeah, see, we're in number.
No
we're
question,
in
there
number
is a lot
3.
of suffering.
Now we got 4
Let me welcome
and
Dr.
5.
Juan Perez to this discussion. Is
Oh,
Dr.
snap.
Gamble
There's
wrong?
another doctor.
Actually, in a way, we agree. Responders, whether international organizations, governments, or even employers and families, each are weighing risks and benefits. And there is not a one-size-fits-all approach, as there are different appetites for risk. What I will
They
say,
declared
in my
Bud the
mind,
winner on
our
the TKO. They
response
stopped
should
it.
aim to protect
I
every
don't know.
life
It
we
might have
can.
been a little bit of early stop, but I do like this referee.
But let's be
He's
frank,
usually pretty
letting the global
consistent.
economy slow to a halt puts lives at risk.
Look like
Yes.
they might have just
Yes,
been
but
protecting
there
the fight. A
does
lot of
need to
times they
be
want to
a
make sure that
balance.
Okay,
the
you
other
both
boxer's
agree
okay.
balance
You know,
is
you don't want
paramount.
anybody to get hurt.
Theoretically, that's an easy choice, but leaders are now faced with very real and very tough decisions. Just last week, traditional sources for emergency funding had exceeded their limits. As new mechanisms are being discussed, there is consideration as whether funds should primarily support health emergency response or prop up economies.
Pop-up
Precisely.
economies.
And we do
Right.
need these funds sooner rather than later. Funding shortfalls are putting lives at risk and extending this devastating crisis.
Yeah, people could still
Again,
be waiting on their
We
stimulus
seem
check.
to agree. We cannot shortchange the health response, but I suspect we disagree when I suggest that some of these funds are best used to save jobs and critical industries.
Just as a
National
reminder,
leaders
this
certainly
was
have this on top of their
October
minds during the
2019.
ongoing debates.
And these two guys really
I am
aren't
not
news
an economist
reporters
or a
or
politician
doctors or
for that
whatever
matter,
they're
but as a
economists or whatever
physician,
they're
I
pretending to
am
be.
comfortable saying that our health response to CAPS cannot afford to
Excuse
wait
me.
for an incredibly complex debate about what sounds to me like history's most expensive economic bailout.
We were
Thank you
doing good.
both, and we
Why
will be
is it so
watching and
long?
listening for the outcome of these vital discussions. And certainly, the market is eagerly watching for any signs of hope.
Okay, to go deeper on this, Dr. Eric Toner from...
All right, we're not going to listen to that guy. We're going to move straight over here to number 4. Just listen up and see if we get the cough
Okay,
again.
we will now advance 3 weeks to the fourth and
3
final
weeks,
meeting
3
of
weeks,
the
3
Pandemic
weeks, 3
Emergency
weeks.
Board on December 18th, 2019.
Okay, thank you for reconvening, and let's get an update from Dr. Rivers.
No joke there.
In the last 3 weeks,
And the
case
cough.
numbers have continued to grow exponentially. We now
All
have
right,
an
let's get
estimated
over to
4.2 million
the
cases
1
and
minute mark. Why does that make me
240,000
laugh?
deaths.
This
Almost
thing
every
is
country.
funny. This thing is funny. That makes me laugh. Doing the thing
Alarming news emerging
because
from
it
social
spreads.
media companies today
It
about the
spreads
CAPS
by
pandemic.
breathing and
Twitter and
coughing.
Facebook are reporting
Somebody
they've
comes every
identified
time.
and
Every
deleted
time they
a
come back.
disturbing number of accounts
It's
dedicated
funny
to
to me.
spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more on this, we go to our correspondent,
Sorry, I'm just kidding.
Catalina
Okay,
Parks.
sorry.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored
All right,
groups
we're in segment
intending to
4. It's
sow
only
political discord, and some individuals are
let's see
seemingly seeking
here.
to gain
We got
financial
like 3.5
advantages.
minutes. Oh, that's 2.
Violence against healthcare
Oh,
workers
because
and
they're doing
minority
epilogue. So
populations
this
has
is
been
basically it.
increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts. Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some
That
cases,
sounds familiar.
limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
But what?
Thank you, Catalina. For more on this, we are joined by experts on crisis communications and social media.
There's
Kevin
experts on
McAleese
crisis
and Sarah Lee.
communications and social
To
media.
me, it is clear countries need to make strong efforts to manage
When I made
both
the
mis
timestamps, I didn't
and
watch it. I just
disinformation.
I watched it.
We
I
know
scrolled
social
through.
media companies are working around the clock to combat these disinformation campaigns. The task of identifying every bad actor is immense.
Yeah.
And experts agree that
Sure.
new disinformation campaigns are being generated every day. This is a huge problem that's going to keep us from ending the pandemic
What?
and might even lead to the fall of governments,
Stop it.
as we saw in the Arab Spring. If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
I agree with Kevin. This is a big problem and doesn't even account for the massive amounts of
lag in her
misinformation being
response.
generated by legitimate users about the pandemic. But it's not just trolls who are spreading the fake news. It's often political leaders themselves. Who's to judge what's real or not? Would we trust every government to separate truth from lies?
I think this is more than just keeping the bad information out. It's also about making sure real public health information reaches the public. News is found from outlets other than social media. News organizations, public health groups, and companies need to help people take the right actions to protect themselves by promoting accurate, real information about the outbreak.
My knees.
Okay, for more on this, we're going to get a brief...
No, we're not. We're going over to segment 5. Oh, wait. There's an epilogue. I do want to play the epilogue a little bit. Hold on. And you won't be looking at anything interesting right here. It's at 3:20:39. Let's drop it.
Includes the exercise portion of the event. How did this pandemic turn out? Please watch this epilogue video and you can see the outcome.